Hey guys, tonight we're traveling back to a time when winters weren't just inconvenient, they were survival games wrapped in wool and mud. Imagine waking up in the cold, before the sun even thinks about showing up. Your breath fogs the air, your toes are already numb, and you haven't even left the house yet. You're a medieval peasant, and this is your life. Spoiler, you probably won't survive this, but don't worry, it's meant to help you fall asleep, not panic. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop a comment with your location and local time. I love seeing where you all are listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge out of the hovel before the sky has even lightened. The ground is frozen stiff, crunchy under your leather-wrapped feet, if you're lucky enough to have something between your skin and the earth. The dirt path leading out of your village crunches like stale bread beneath you. It's not snowing yet, but the sky has that heavy gray feeling, like it's about to sneeze all over your day with icy misery. The air smells of damp hay, old smoke, and something faintly sour, maybe the neighbor's pigs. Your hands, already cracked from the last few days of cold, start aching within minutes. They'll be red and raw before noon, and you've accepted that. Your first stop is probably the communal well, or, if you're on animal duty today, the shed where the oxen snort frost through their nostrils like miniature dragons. You pretend you don't notice the ice crusting their watering trough. You chip at it with a stick. It resists. Your hands hate you. There's no such thing as weekend or time off. The fields still need attention, even in winter. The fencing still collapses in storms. The firewood still has to be chopped. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants worked less than modern people due to all the holy days off. But when the days are short, cold, and fueled by porridge and pain, that argument feels irrelevant. You squint at the horizon, no sign of sun yet, just the vague bruising of early light. Your breath comes out in plumes, like you're trying to communicate with the clouds. Maybe they'll send warmth back down. They never do. Your tunic is made of undyed wool. It's itchy. It's gray. It used to be your father's. There's a patch near the hem where your sister tried embroidery, but it just looks like someone tried to stab a daisy into fabric with a fork. You wear it anyway. You wear everything you own, sometimes all at once. There's no such thing as layers for fashion. It's layers for not dying. You're hungry, always. The morning meal, if you're lucky, is a hunk of coarse bread so hard you could use it to hammer nails. Sometimes a smear of lard. It sticks to the roof of your mouth. You miss the taste of apples. You haven't seen a fresh one since the last harvest festival, and that was the one the priest dropped into the mud, and nobody cared. Speaking of the priest, his house has real shutters, wooden ones. Yours are slabs of cloth soaked in grease. They keep out some wind and all the sunlight. But hey, that means your bedroom, the entire single-room house, gets a lovely cave-like ambiance. Perfect for sleeping if only you didn't share it with 3 siblings, 2 goats, and a rooster with insomnia. You glance at the woods nearby. Forbidden, technically, the Lord's forest, but you know them. You know which trees creak in the wind like they're gossiping, which routes should to avoided when it's slippery. You pretend sometimes that you're a scout, sneaking through enemy lands. Then you slip and land on your butt. It's humbling. Mud always is. Sometimes in the coldest mornings, you imagine the warmth of a castle fire. Not that you've ever been inside one, but stories filter down, tapestries, roasted meats, personal space, actual socks. Nobles have their own kind of winter, far away from your blistered fingers and smoke-choked chimney. Still, there's something about the cold that makes your village feel united. Everyone's miserable together. Old Marth down the road shares what's left of her dried herbs when someone starts coughing. The blacksmith, big and gruff, gave you a bent nail to use as a fishhook once. You never caught anything, but you appreciated the thought. You return to your hovel after tending to the animals. The chickens are dramatic about frozen eggs. The cow has developed a sense of sarcasm, probably. She stares at you like she knows you stepped in her dung again. You scrape it off on a rock and move on. Inside, the fire has been coaxed back to life by your mother. She used a twist of straw and half of last night's dream to get it going. It smokes more than it warms. Your eyes sting. You lean close anyway. The hearth is the heart of the home, and this heart wheezes like it's got pneumonia. You sit on a stool that used to be a tree stump. Your brother offers you the bread heel. It's a little moldy. You don't care. Chewing it takes concentration, and for a minute, you forget the way the wind whistles through the cracks in the wall. You think about summer, the buzzing bees, the itchy hay, the endless sun. Then you shiver and pull your cloak tighter. That's months away, and the frost on the inside of the window tells you tonight will be colder than yesterday. Still, there's something oddly cozy about it all. The layers, the closeness, the smell of wood smoke clings to everything you own. It's miserable, sure, but it's yours. Outside, the wind howls. Inside, your sister hums a song with no words. Your cracked hands slowly thaw near the flickering fire. You made it through another morning. You don't own a calendar, but your bones do. They tell you exactly how far into winter you are. The ache in your knees is sharper now, especially when you squat to gather kindling or lift a bucket from the well. The cold seeps into the cracks of your joints like a nosy neighbor and refuses to leave. You shuffle outside again, wrapped in layers that barely qualify as clothing by modern standards. The outer wool is damp from yesterday's snowmelt, and it smells like a wet dog that rolled in ashes. You tug it tighter, hoping it'll be enough to keep the morning chill from crawling down your neck. Today, your task is to collect firewood, but not from the good trees. Oh no, those belong to the Lord. The forest laws are strict, and you're just one borrowed branch away from a fine, or worse. Historians still argue whether these laws were enforced uniformly or were more like a handy excuse for punishment when needed. Either way, you're careful. You only gather fallen branches and twigs, whispering apologies to the trees like they might rat you out. Your path takes you near the woods, where shadows stretch long even at midday. You spot the familiar oak that looks like it's about to tiptoe away. Its roots curl above ground like lazy fingers, and the bark peels in odd shapes. You always wonder if that tree's cursed, or maybe just cold. Trees probably don't like frost either. You fill your bundle with sticks brittle as stale breadsticks. One snaps in half too easily and nearly pokes your eye. You curse under your breath, something your mother would scold you for if she heard. She says winter spirits listen more closely than people do, not that they ever offer to help carry kindling. You pass a stone marker on your way back, an old one, mossy, with worn carvings. It might be Roman, or maybe someone just got bored and carved it 2 centuries ago. Historians still debate whether these standing stones served as land boundaries, religious markers, or ancient peasant doodles. Either way, it breaks the monotony of snow and twigs. Back home, the fire is a pitiful ember. You nurse it with your fresh bundle, hoping today's harvest will stretch a few more meals. The warmth is fleeting, the smoke is not. It curls up into the rafters and mingles with soot from the last decade. You try not to cough too loudly. Last winter, your uncle started coughing in December and was buried by January. The ground was so frozen, they had to wait 3 days just to dig. Dinner is creative, a turnip, sliced thin and roasted over the fire until it gives up its will to live. You eat slowly, trying to imagine it's something else, something tastier. Maybe chicken stew, maybe roasted chestnuts like the priest sometimes gets from the traveling merchants. Once, a neighbor claimed to have tasted sugar. You're still not sure if they were dreaming or delirious. As night falls, the wind picks up. It whistles through the holes in the wall like a drunken bard trying to remember his lyrics. You stuff rags into the worst of the cracks. Your mother adds another layer of straw to the sleeping corner. The straw itches, but it's better than bare dirt. Everyone huddles together. Your sister wraps her cold feet behind your knees. You pretend not to notice, but in truth, you're grateful. Body heat is the only kind you can count on. Your little brother snores like a piglet. He kicks in his sleep. You try not to take it personally. You stare at the rafters. You count the beams. You try not to think about the time that rat dropped from the ceiling onto your face. That was last February. You still flinch when you hear scurrying above. Sometimes you think about the abbey a few towns over. They say the monks have heated floors. You're not entirely sure what that means, but it sounds like witchcraft or heaven. Maybe both. Your dreams are weird now. Winter dreams always are. You imagine warmth, mostly bonfires, sunny fields. Once you dreamed of an enormous bread loaf the size of a hay cart. You woke up chewing your blanket. Your sister hasn't let you live it down. Midnight brings new sounds. A distant howl. Maybe a wolf. Maybe just the wind with indigestion. You press closer to your siblings. The rooster stirs. He's confused. Again. You hate that bird. You fall asleep to the sound of your father's soft breathing and the wind testing the strength of your patched roof. It's holding for now. You try not to think about the time it didn't. Morning comes reluctantly. You rise with stiff limbs and a sour back. The cold feels personal today, like it's targeting your spine on purpose. You groan like an old door hinge and shuffle toward the door. Outside it's snowing. Fine powder this time, not the wet, heavy stuff. It sticks to your lashes. You blink and taste it. Clean, cold. Better than the water in the bucket, which now has a thin crust of ice. You jab a stick through it. Today is repair day. The chicken coop door has lost another hinge. The roof over the tool shed sags. Your life is a never-ending episode of Fixer-Upper Medieval Misery Edition. You try using some frozen mud as mortar. It works surprisingly well until the sun peeks out and everything turns back to sludge. You make a mental note. Build faster next time. Your neighbor Thomas waves from across the lane. He's wearing a hat made of what looks like an old sock. You compliment it. He says it's a gift from his grandmother and also possibly cursed. You tell him that's probably why it's warm. You both laugh. Later, your mother gathers you and your siblings around the hearth. She tells a story. Something about a frost demon who steals voices from children who complain too much. You nod solemnly. Your sister doesn't talk for the rest of the night. You owe your mom for that. You fall asleep with your feet near the fire and your head on a folded tunic. It smells like smoke and goat. You've smelled worse. The wind picks up again. You wonder if spring will ever come. You remind yourself it always does, eventually. You wake up to a sound that makes your stomach sink. A distant church bell tolling 1, 2, 3 times. Not a holy day, not a wedding. That's a death bell. Someone's passed, and in a village this small, you'll know who before lunch. Winter always takes a few. Old Maud, with her frozen toes and a memory that faded before the last harvest, she was a likely candidate. Or maybe Willem, who coughed blood into his stew 3 nights ago and called it extra seasoning. You hope it's not the miller. Without him, the whole village's flour supply would grind to a halt, literally. You sit up slowly. Your back protests like you've betrayed it somehow. The cold has a way of making your own body feel like it's arguing with you. Your breath fogs the air in front of your face. It's cold enough to freeze your thoughts before they form. Out in the yard, there's a hole dug halfway through the snow. Your father started it last night. It's the latrine trench for winter. The ground is stubborn, like it resents being disturbed. You stab at it with a spade, but it fights back. You're sweating under 3 layers, but your fingertips feel like they belong to someone else, someone with worse circulation. Your family breaks fast on porridge again. It's thinner than usual. The grain ran low last week, and the flour's stretched so far it's nearly transparent. Your mother ladles it out with the kind of grim dignity that royalty might envy if they were ever that hungry. You eat slowly, pretending the tiny lumps are raisins. They're not. They're ash bits from the soot that falls into the pot sometimes. You chew them anyway. The baby cries again. She's been crying a lot this week. Your mother says it's the cold. You think it's because the goat's milk ran dry. The goat herself looks apologetic, but also unbothered. Animals always do. Your job today is to mend the fence. Well, calling it a fence is generous. It's a leaning suggestion of a boundary made from broken branches and wishful thinking. You lash together what you can with frozen twine, hoping it holds through the next storm. A few chickens escape during the process and go squawking into the snow. You recover 2. The third is probably halfway to Normandy by now. While you're out, you hear the news. It was Willem who died. The blacksmith's boy, not that young, but not old either. He always had a laugh that echoed like a slap. He once convinced half the village that you could stop frostbite by rubbing your feet with boiled onion water. It didn't work, but it smelled like soup for days. They'll bury him this evening, after the ground's been thawed enough with coals. You wonder if anyone will bother with a shroud. Probably not. Linen's precious, and even death has a budget in winter. As you return home, you spot smoke rising from the Lord's manor. Thick, lazy smoke, the kind that only comes from large, indulgent fires. You imagine the hearth in his hall, roaring like a dragon, with meats turning on spits and dogs sprawled out under benches like sleepy royalty. You're not allowed inside, of course, unless you're summoned, which usually means punishment, not hot cider. Your breath fogs again, and you amuse yourself by blowing smoke rings like some medieval dragon. Your sister copies you. Hers come out more like chaotic clouds. She says they look like ghost pigs. You laugh. Back inside, the baby's quiet now, asleep finally. Your mother is darning socks again. The holes in the heels look like they were chewed by a mouse with a grudge. She hums a song that doesn't have words. You've heard it all your life. You still don't know where it came from. Maybe it predates language. You check the stores, turnips, a jar of pickled cabbage, one tiny wedge of cheese so hardened it might double as a weapon. You debate whether to slice it tonight or keep it for a special occasion, like not starving. You spend the afternoon helping your father clean out the ash pit. It's a miserable job. The soot clings to everything, your skin, your clothes, your nose hairs. You sneeze and leave a trail of gray-black mist, like some kind of cursed chimney sprite. As you scoop, your father tells a story about the time the whole hearth collapsed in the winter of '79. Not your '79, long before you were born. Everything turned to smoke and fire, he says, and we all had to sleep in the chicken coop for a week. You believe him. He has soot scars on one forearm to prove it. Evening comes quickly. The sun seems shy these days, barely peeking before vanishing again like it owes someone money. The wind sharpens. It bites at your ankles, even inside the house. You pile more straw near the hearth and tuck in early. That night, you attend Willem's burial. Everyone's breath fogs the night air like chimney smoke. The priest drones on in Latin. No one understands him, including himself. The grave looks more like a crater. They had to soften the earth with hot coals just to get that far down. You help lower the body. It's wrapped in wool, not linen, probably his mother's shawl. A soft hum breaks the silence. It's your neighbor's daughter, singing something sweet. You recognize the tune. It's a lullaby. It doesn't make it any less sad. Afterward, there's bread passed around, flat barley bread, so dense it could dent a skull. You chew in silence. No one wants to speak. A death in winter hits harder. Frozen ground is unforgiving. You return home with stiff limbs and cold fingers. Your sister asks if Willem will haunt the woods now. You shrug. You don't say no. Your dreams are strange again. You're in a green field, barefoot, running after chickens that turn into loaves of bread. You catch one. It clucks and says your name. You wake up biting your sleeve again. You're up before the sun again, not because you want to be. No one in their right mind would, but because the cold doesn't let you sleep for long. It's like your bed is conspiring with the weather to make sure your back never feels normal again. You roll out of the straw-stuffed mattress, which smells faintly of damp hay and dreams deferred. There's frost on the inside of the shutters. Your breath paints temporary murals on the air. Outside, the snow looks soft and untouched, but you know better. It hides treacherous slush, holes, and the occasional frozen chicken surprise. You wrap your wool tunic tighter and head for the woodpile, which is more of a wood scatter at this point. Most of the good pieces were burned weeks ago. What's left are damp, splintery fragments that burn reluctantly, like they're offended you even asked. Today's big event? Water duty. The well isn't close, and it's more like a slushy hole at this time of year. Carrying 2 wooden buckets there and back is medieval CrossFit. Your arms will ache before you're even halfway home, and the icy slosh will soak through your shoes. Historians still argue whether winter water duty was a rite of passage or just cruelly necessary, but your shoulders don't care about historical debates. On your way there, you pass old Bertram's hut. His door is open, swinging slightly. That's not normal. You peek in. He's sitting in his chair, covered in a thin layer of frost, eyes closed, peaceful like he'd just decided to nap. Forever. You step back quietly. There's no panic. This happens in winter. People are still. He won't need his firewood anymore. By the time you return home, the buckets are only half full. Some spilled, some froze. You try not to feel guilty when your father doesn't say a word. He just pours what's left into the cooking pot and nods at the hearth. Time to make fire again. Fire making is never fun in January. The flint feels like ice, and the tinder's never quite dry enough. After what feels like the 1,000th spark, a reluctant flame flickers to life. You protect it like a secret, coaxing it gently until the logs finally catch. There's a moment of victory, brief and beautiful, before the smoke starts curling into the room like it owns the place. Chimney drafts acting up again. Your sister helps with chores today, bundled in 3 cloaks and still managing to complain. She's in charge of the root cellar, an underground cavern of damp smells and questionable potatoes. You join her to check the stores. There's some good news, a hidden stash of onions, and some bad news. Something has clearly been chewing on them, probably rats, maybe goblins, if you're in the mood for folklore. She jokes about training the rats to sing for food. You both laugh, but deep down you know, if the grain runs out, you might just consider rat stew. It's not unheard of. People don't talk about it, but they also don't throw anything away anymore. Lunch is onion soup, thin and sharp. You eat slowly, savoring each chunk like it's treasure. There's even a crust of bread today, slightly moldy, but the mold gets scraped. You've learned not to be squeamish about the green bits. In the afternoon, you help your father mend the thatch. Ice weighs heavily on the roof and threatens to cave in parts. You climb up with a bundle of straw tied around your shoulders like some weird rustic superhero. The thatch is slick and brittle, like frozen noodles. You patch what you can while trying not to slide into the pig pen below. The pigs, by the way, are warm, cozy even. You consider whether they'd let you sleep there one night. Just once. Later, a traveling friar passes through, cloaked in fur and smelling faintly of incense and wet wool. He tells stories by the fire while sipping something suspiciously nice-smelling from a flask. He speaks of monasteries where monks eat 5 times a day and keep books made of calfskin. Your sister is amazed. You're skeptical. 5 meals? That sounds like fantasy, but the idea of warmth and candlelight and thick parchment is seductive. You ask if peasants can join. He says, with enough devotion. You wonder if devotion includes sneaking cheese wheels under your cloak. He also mentions a comet sighting, some fiery streak seen near York. He says it might be a sign. You roll your eyes. Last time there was a sign, the town tried to burn a woman for having mismatched eyes. But still, there's something thrilling about thinking the sky might be watching. Evening comes, and you're exhausted. Your hands are cracked from the cold and hard work. You smear on a mix your mother makes from goose fat and crushed herbs. It smells like soup again, but your fingers thank you as you lie down, wrapped in every available scrap of cloth and animal skin. You hear the wind pick up. It whistles through gaps in the wood, sings through the thatch. It's oddly melodic. You imagine it as a kind of lullaby, nature's rough attempt at a bedtime song. Your mother tells you stories from her childhood while the fire crackles, about winters worse than this one, about a time when the river froze solid enough for a cow to walk across it. You ask if that happened. She shrugs. Memory in the village is more suggestion than record. Your last thoughts before sleep are of the friar's words, a monastery with walls, warmth, and words written in ink. You wonder what that life would be like. Then you hear the pigs snore, and your sister mumbles something about ghost rats, and your eyelids finally lose the fight. You wake to a strange sound this time, not the usual groan of wind or the rooster's suicidal optimism, but something more deliberate. A knock, not on your door but the neighbor's. Sharp, purposeful, you shift the curtain aside. A man in a thick woolen cloak, trimmed with something that might once have been fur, stands flanked by two others. One holds a scroll, the other holds a sword. That's rarely a friendly combination. It's a tax collector. Of course it is. You shrink back, grateful your family's already given this season. You overhear something about overdue levies and tithe grain. The neighbor tries to argue, but arguing with officials in the dead of winter is like yelling at frost to melt. It just cracks louder. As you head out to collect firewood, you pass the scene. The collector doesn't look at you. You're furniture to him. Peasant wallpaper, but his boots, they're leather, polished with silver buckles. You haven't seen silver in weeks. You think about how many meals you could trade for just one of those buckles. The idea makes you weirdly hungry. You reach the woods where deadfall is easiest to find. Snow crunches underfoot like stale bread. The forest is quiet, but not silent. There's the rustle of something unseen. Maybe a deer, maybe something less edible. You gather branches quickly. Last week, a boy from the next village vanished out here. Some say wolves, others whisper about the old stone circle deeper in the woods. Historians still argue whether such places were sacred or just convenient meeting spots for bored shepherds with vivid imaginations. By the time you return, your fingers are numb and your bundle is tied badly. It unravels twice, and you nearly lose a good stick to the river's edge. When you get back, your father nods at the bundle. Burns fast, he mutters, not unkindly. Later that day, the local reeve, the landlord's tattletale, calls a village meeting. You all gather in the field near the well, boots sinking slightly into half-thawed mud. The reeve announces that the Lord has requested extra hands to clear the frozen canal near the manor. Your stomach sinks. That means digging ice in the wind, with tools that haven't seen a whetstone since last summer. You're chosen. You're young, which means your limbs can survive the abuse. So off you go, with a rusty spade and a coat that doesn't quite cover your wrists. Your friends joke on the way there, mostly dark humor. Someone calls the reeve a wool-witted sheep in boots. You all laugh quietly, never too loud. Jokes don't keep you warm, but they help. The canal is worse than you imagined. A wide trench of ice, slush, and half-submerged branches. The water beneath is moving sluggishly, black and uninviting. You hack at the surface with your spade. The sound is sharp, brittle. Ice cracks like old bone. Your hands throb from the shock of each strike. One boy slips. You all freeze. He's waist deep in freezing water before anyone moves. You pull him out quickly, but his lips are already blue. Someone wraps him in cloaks. The reeve says he'll warm by the fire. You all know he probably won't. Work continues. The canal is half clear by dusk, and your body is half broken. Back home, your mother has soup ready, barley and turnip, with a whisper of meat so faint it might just be wishful thinking. You eat slowly, letting the steam thaw your nose. Your sister shows you her new mittens, stitched from scraps of an old tunic. She's proud. They're hideous, but warm. You say they're perfect. That night your uncle arrives from the next village over. He looks thinner than you remember. He says they've had it worse. No grain left. A baby didn't make it. You sit quietly while he eats. He chews like someone who doesn't trust food anymore. He brought news. A man was caught stealing from a church pantry. They didn't hang him, which surprises everyone. Just branded his hand. Merciful, someone says. You wonder what mercy feels like in February? Before bed, you help your mother seal the windows with a cloth. The wind has picked up again, and the last thing anyone needs is another night of snow flurries finding their way in. She tells you to keep your boots by the fire so they don't freeze solid. You do, but they still feel like bricks when you pull them on in the morning. In the last hour before sleep, you stare at the rafters above your bed. There's frost there too, glistening faintly in the firelight. You wonder who built this house, what their winters were like. Did they sit in this same spot and worry about next week's bread? Did they dream of warmer lands, of places where the ground doesn't crunch and ache? Your sister mumbles in her sleep again, something about warm pies and flying goats. You smile. Then the wind moans through the walls, and your smile fades into a sigh. Just another day, you think. Just another beautiful, miserable day. You wake earlier than usual, not because of noise or cold, but because you can't tell if it's still night. The cloud cover outside is so thick, it feels like the sky forgot how to be morning. You lie still for a moment, blanket over your head, trying to ignore the stiffness in your back. The straw in your mattress has flattened again, and it smells vaguely of mildew and, oddly, onions. You tell yourself it builds character. It mostly just builds neck pain. The village is eerily quiet today. Even the chickens seem too depressed to squawk. You're not sure what day it is, but you're sure it's a fasting one, which, in a peasant household, is a bit like calling an empty pantry a religious experience. You trudge out to check the grain store. Your father keeps it locked tighter than a monk's confession box. You open the creaking door and squint inside. You count 3 sacks of rye, 1 half-empty barley sack, and a questionable pile of oats that's starting to smell like old socks. Not great, but not panic-worthy yet. Back at the cottage, your mother is boiling water with dried herbs. It smells like sage and something slightly burnt. She calls it medicine, but it's more of a warm suggestion. Your younger brother has a cough that's been clinging to him like a bad habit. You sit beside him and let him lean on your shoulder. He feels small today, smaller than usual. You hope spring finds him in time. Mid-morning brings a knock. Not the tax collector this time, thank the saints. It's one of the miller's sons, wrapped in so many scarves he looks like a sentient laundry pile. He's delivering word. The Lord Steward is coming through tomorrow. That means everyone's expected to look industrious and vaguely grateful. It also means cleaning the cottage until it no longer resembles a bear's den. Your mother groans, so you sweep, you scrub, you knock soot off the hearth until your hands are black and your mood blacker. Your sister unpacks her best tunic, best meaning least patched. You do the same, grumbling as you try to flatten a wrinkle that may be structural. It's like dressing a scarecrow for royal inspection. There's tension in the village, and not just because of the steward. Supplies are running low for everyone. The baker's wife got caught stretching flour with sawdust. The priest had to scold her publicly, which was awkward for everyone since she's also his cousin. Historians still argue whether such community justice helped preserve order or just gave nosy neighbors an excuse to get self-righteous. Afternoon comes, and you're sent to fetch water. The path to the stream is slippery, iced over with a sheen so smooth you could skate on it, if you were suicidal or Scandinavian. You tread carefully, clutching the pail. Halfway there, you spot something strange, a pile of feathers scattered across the snow. Not a full bird, just remnants. You pause. It could be a fox. It could be something less natural. People talk of spirits in these parts, lights in the woods. A girl once claimed she saw her dead grandfather near the black tree stump. Nobody believed her, except the midwife, and she's seen things. You fill the pail and head home, legs aching, breath fogging in front of you like a ghost that refuses to leave. The sky is still the color of old wool, no sun to speak of. It's only mid-afternoon, but shadows creep early in winter. You arrive back, water sloshing over your boots, only to find the neighbor's goat in your garden again. It's chewing what might have been the last cabbage. You shoo it away with a broom and curse under your breath. The goat looks unimpressed. Evening brings a bit of warmth. Your uncle is telling a story by the hearth, a ridiculous one about a nobleman who mistook a frozen log for a dragon. Your siblings laugh, which is medicine of its own. You eat slowly, stewed lentils and stale crusts softened with broth. Not bad. You've had worse. Once, during a particularly bad winter, your family survived on boiled tree bark. Not your proudest culinary chapter, your father sharpens his axe. Not for woodcutting, but as a statement. In case the steward gets ideas, he says. You're not sure if he's joking. Probably. Maybe. That night you can't sleep, not for fear or hunger, but because your feet are too cold. You tuck them under the dog, who grumbles but doesn't move. His warmth is a small mercy. The wind moans again. It always moans differently when a storm is near. You think you hear something else. A whisper? Probably just the wind, you tell yourself. Just the wind. The candle burns low, and your eyes grow heavy. You listen to your siblings breathing. The fire pops once. The room glows with orange light. You wonder how many winters are left in your bones, and whether, one day, someone will read about your life and wonder how you managed. Then again, you didn't have much choice. You close your eyes. Morning creeps in slowly, like a beggar unsure of his welcome. You crack open your eyes to the familiar gray gloom seeping through the wooden shutters, and that same sour taste of cold air mixed with last night's fire smoke. No birdsong, of course, not in this season, just the distant clatter of hooves and a voice calling out orders. Right, the steward has arrived. You groan as you sit up, your limbs stiff as frozen branches, your breath mists in the air, and your fingers are too numb to tie the strings of your tunic properly. You settle for tucking them in and stomping your boots on. They're still damp from yesterday's water trip, and as you slide them on, you silently mourn the sensation of warm, dry socks, a luxury you've never actually known, but dream about frequently. Outside, the village is pretending everything's fine. Children scrub doorways that they had smeared mud on the day before. Old women are standing in suspiciously staged positions, pretending to sort bundles of straw that haven't moved in weeks. Your father gives you the nod, the one that means try not to look like you'd bite a noble. You smile. Sort of. The steward rides in on a chestnut horse with a nose cover embroidered in the Lord's colors, blue and gold. You try not to be impressed. He's followed by a handful of guards, a scribe who looks like he's been sneezing since 1100, and a cart full of scrolls and boxes. The steward wears a fur-trimmed cloak and gloves lined with lambskin, and you can't help but think, dramatically, that his mittens alone could feed your entire family for a week. He inspects the cottages with a disapproving nose, as though poverty were a smell he's still not used to. When he finally gets to yours, your mother curtsies so low it looks like a squat. Your father stands straight but silent. You look down respectfully and chew the inside of your cheek. He asks how many animals you've got left. Your father answers honestly. 3 chickens, 2 half-useful pigs, and a goat that may or may not belong to the neighbor. The steward nods, makes a note, and moves on, just like that. Years of survival, recorded in 2 words and a shrug. Later, in the churchyard, the village gathers for the steward's announcements. Rents are due early this year. Surprise. A new grain levy is being added. Double surprise. And the worst part? The Lord is requesting labor for a new drainage ditch to be dug near the western marsh. That means hauling tools through frozen earth, waist-deep in mud, for no pay but the vague promise of good standing. The crowd grumbles, a few curses under their breath. One brave soul sneezes loudly and mutters, "May the marsh swallow his boots." The priest coughs to cover the laughter. By midday, the steward and his entourage have vanished down the road, leaving behind silence, paperwork, and mild despair. Your mother is fierce in the way only mothers can be, quietly while chopping root vegetables harder than strictly necessary. She mutters about injustice and rich men with soft hands. You peel turnips nearby, nodding. You spend the afternoon repairing a section of the fence that the pigs push through. It's a mess of twine, bent stakes, and your frozen breath puffing into the air. As you work, your mind drifts. You think of those guards with their iron swords and polished boots. You wonder if they were born into that comfort or clawed their way toward it. A boy from the next cottage over joins you. He offers a scrap of dried apple, and you share a joke about the steward's overly rosy cheeks. Looks like he kissed a stove. You both laugh quietly. In a winter like this, humor is fuel. You trade a few more insults about the nobility, then part ways. Friendship, like firewood, is best kept dry and nearby. Dinner is boiled peas and another round of turnip stew. You've eaten so many turnips lately, you're starting to imagine them whispering at night. Your brother swears he saw one blink. Before bed, you listen as your father tells a story, one from before the famine. He talks about a wedding where people danced until dawn, drank cider from hollowed-out gourds, and roasted a whole pig on a spit. Your sister asks if that was even real. Your father smiles sadly and says, maybe. You lie in bed later, blanket wrapped tightly, watching the fire shrink into embers. You hear the wind again, rattling the shutters like it's trying to get in, the candle guttered earlier, leaving only firelight. The walls creak in the cold, as if the house itself is stretching its bones. Your thoughts wander. You remember how the steward never looked you in the eye. You wonder if he even saw you at all. You wonder what it's like to walk through life untouched by frost, by hunger, by fear. Historians still debate whether medieval stewards truly understood, deliberately ignored, suffering in the villages they governed. But to you, the answer feels obvious. Sleep finds you slowly, one breath at a time, as you curl tighter beneath the rough wool. Outside, the frost is thickening on the ground, setting in like a permanent guest. But in your dreams, there's cider and dancing and warm boots that fit just right. By the time the sun slinks over the horizon, weak and watery as ever, your joints ache like they've aged 5 years overnight. But there's no time for groaning. Today is the ditch day, the great muddy obligation that's somehow supposed to elevate your village's standing in the eyes of your noble lord. Spoiler alert, it won't. You and half the able-bodied souls in your hamlet trudge toward the western marsh, tools in hand, though calling them tools is generous. You carry a bent spade with a splintered handle that pinches your palm like it has a vendetta. Behind you, someone coughs. Ahead, someone sneezes. The march toward the marsh feels less like community labor and more like a grim pilgrimage. When you arrive, the steward is, of course, not there. Just his orders, pinned to a tree with a small knife. Classic delegation. You read the barely legible scrawl. Drainage trench, width of 3 feet, depth of 2. You glance at the half-frozen muck that passes for soil and sigh with the collective spirit of 6 exhausted generations. You jab your spade into the ground. It bounces back. Of course it does. The frost has turned the earth into a slab of misery. You stamp on the blade with both feet, leaning into it like you're wrestling a wild boar. Eventually, the soil gives way with a wet, resentful squelch, and the day begins. Digging in winter isn't just a task. It's an existential crisis. Your breath comes out in wheezes, your fingers throb inside your mittens, and mud clings to your boots until you feel like you're dragging another person with every step. Everyone around you is doing the same, head down, back bent, muttering the occasional, "by all that's holy," when their spade hits a root or a rock. Every hour someone stops to blow into their hands. Every few hours someone takes a sip from a gourd of thin ale or a chunk of stale bread. You exchange a few words. The work is too heavy, and besides, jokes don't bounce as well in the marsh air. It's as though even laughter sinks here. You pause just once, resting against a felled log, staring at the half-finished trench. It's maybe 6 inches deep, filled with more water than you'd hoped. You wonder how a ditch like this prevents anything. Historians still argue whether these kinds of forced labor projects had any real long-term impact on agricultural productivity or were just feudal theatrics, your modern brain whispers. Your medieval back disagrees with the academic debate. It hurts either way. Then there's the mystery of the marsh itself. Old women in your village say this place is cursed, that beneath the moss and sludge lie the bones of soldiers or thieves, long buried and long forgotten. One girl swears her aunt heard voices in the fog, whispering names no one should know. You roll your eyes, but keep a respectful silence. Why tempt mud spirits? Midday arrives with no ceremony. The sky remains an unflavored porridge color, and your body is a map of small injuries. A boy loses a boot to the bog and spends 10 minutes hopping around, cursing like someone twice his age. You help dig it out. It smells faintly of mold and failure, but he's grateful. You're both grateful. It's the closest thing to success you'll see today. By late afternoon, the trench is technically done. It's uneven, soggy, and looks more like a series of shallow graves, but no one has the energy to complain. You lean on your spade like it's a walking stick and breathe deep, trying not to gag on the marsh stink. Around you, others are stretching, groaning, or simply collapsing into squatting piles of exhausted humanity. One man, Godric, who once fought in a border skirmish and never stops talking about it, claims this trench reminds him of the ditches dug during the siege of Durham. You nod politely while mentally reminding yourself that Godric once mistook a goose for a ghost, so his war stories carry mixed credibility. You return home just before dark. Your legs feel like boiled cabbage, and you've never been more aware of your spine. Your mother eyes your muddy cloak with her hands on her hips. You peel it off before she launches into one of her lectures about cleaning means survival. She's not wrong, but still. Dinner is mercifully hot. Barley porridge with actual honey, a gift from a neighbor whose son caught a rabbit this morning. You eat like it's your last meal, licking the bowl with a thoroughness your ancestors would applaud. Your sister gets the last spoonful, and you pretend not to mind. Later, you sit near the hearth with your feet in a bundle of straw. Your father is sharpening an old blade, though no one's quite sure why. There's nothing left to hunt, and bandits don't come by during winter. They don't want frostbite any more than you do. You notice the frost creeping along the window's edge, like winter trying to peek in. Your grandmother used to say that if you could see frost drawing pictures, it meant the spirits were close. Tonight, the designs on the glass look like rivers, or maybe roots. You don't mention it. You just watch them spread. As you curl into bed, aching but fed, you wonder whether the Lord will even know you dug that trench, whether his steward will report your effort, your blisters, your cracked fingernails. You doubt it, but you did it anyway. Because survival isn't glamorous, it's repetitive, muddy, and often unacknowledged, and still you did it. By now, your bones have more complaints than a medieval prayer scroll, cracked here, creaky there, and oddly numb in places you didn't know could go numb. But today isn't for digging, threshing, or hauling muck. No, today is the village gathering day, market, council, and communal updates all rolled into one gloriously inefficient event. The main square isn't a square, it's a sloped patch of earth between the chapel and the grain store, where the ground is forever churned by boots, cartwheels, and the occasional pig. You arrive bundled in your thickest tunic, a patchwork of mended wool and fading hope. Steam puffs from mouths like chimney smoke. The frost hasn't lifted, and your breath feels like it could snap in half. Children skitter about, red-cheeked and shrieking, their energy immune to the misery of cold toes. Elders hover near the fire pit, poking at its sputtering flame like they're interrogating it. Somewhere nearby, someone's cooking something with onions. Your stomach growls audibly. A merchant has come from the next village over, bringing salt and dried fish. His cart looks like a riddle of ropes and optimism. You eye the fish. It's stiff as a board, smells like old leather, and still costs half a hen. You shake your head. Not today. Instead, you trade a bundle of kindling for a small wedge of wax. Earwax, one boy jokes, before getting smacked by his older sister. You don't laugh. The wax will be used for candles, and in a world without switches or bulbs, that's more valuable than the joke. You notice a group huddled near the chapel steps. They're whispering about a coming frost that's not natural. One claims to have seen birds flying backward at dawn. Another mutters about the old healer who vanished last week. Historians still argue whether medieval peasant superstitions were survival strategies or just manifestations of stress and malnutrition. Your imaginary textbook chimes in. Either way, you nod solemnly. You've seen enough weirdness not to scoff. Then it's time for the village council, if you can call it that. 3 elders and a reeve sitting on stools, wrapped in layers that make them look like ancient turnips. They go over repairs needed for the millstone, the missing thatch from the bakery roof, and, of course, the trench. A steward rode by and said it looked adequate. You resist the urge to boo. Now comes the social part, which is medieval code for gossip. Someone claims the miller's daughter is sneaking off at night. Someone else says the pigs have been vanishing. Maybe wolves, maybe not. There's talk of a neighboring village where something in the woods howls after dark. A shepherd claims it's just hungry foxes. Another says it walks upright. You sip your weak ale and avoid eye contact. You meet eyes with old Toma, the storyteller, who beckons you over with a gnarled finger and a grin missing 3 teeth. "Got a tale for ya," he rasps, pulling you into his shadow. He spins a yarn about a boy who dug too deep one winter and found a tunnel that whispered his name. You know it's nonsense, but tonight, when the wind howls down the chimney, you'll remember that story. The afternoon slinks away under the gray blanket of cloud, and people begin to drift back to their huts. The square thins. A few stragglers hang about, trading scraps, arguing over whose turn it is to mend the village fence. The mood is slightly brighter. A shared misery is still a kind of comfort after all. On your way home, you pass the chapel. Inside, it's dim and smells of tallow and damp robes. You kneel because that's what you're supposed to do, though your knees object loudly. You mumble a few words, not really prayers, more like bargains. A warm winter, A whole loaf of bread. No wolves. The priest says nothing. He's asleep in the corner, snoring gently. You let him be. Back in your hovel, the fires burned low. Your mother's stirring a pot of turnips. You ask if anything happened while you were gone. Only the ceiling started dripping again, she says, pointing to a small puddle. A single drop lands in your bowl as you eat. You pretend not to notice. As you settle into bed, the wax you bartered for earlier flickers in a stubby candle beside you. Its light casts dancing shapes on the walls, some familiar, some vaguely unsettling. Your sister hums a song she learned from the traveling piper, something about frost and a maiden made of snow. You stare at the ceiling. The day's voices swirl in your mind, trenches, fish, birds flying backward, a tunnel that whispers names. You're too tired to untangle them. Instead, you yawn, pull your cloak tighter around your shoulders, and sink into sleep knowing tomorrow might bring wolves, or worse, another council meeting. You wake to silence, thick, muffled silence. That can only mean one thing: snow. You sit up slowly, joints crackling like an old wooden door, and glance toward the gap in the shutter. Sure enough, the world outside is blanketed in white. A clean, bright layer disguises the mud, the dung, and all the other things that usually offend your eyes. But don't get too dreamy. Snow in a medieval village isn't the romantic snowfall of postcards or cozy winter getaways. It's a logistical disaster. The path to the privy is buried, the well is frozen shut, and your boots, stuffed with straw, will be soaked through before your second step. You pull on your stiff, half-damp clothes and creep outside, hoping to beat the rest of the family to the fire. The snow bites at your feet, sneaking through every seam. It's not the cold that hurts most. It's the wetness. Your toes scream in protest. You imagine them filing a formal complaint to your medieval body. We did not sign up for this. Kindly return us to bed. Outside, the snow lies heavy on rooftops. Some thatch has already caved in. The neighbor's pig is standing confused in a drift up to its neck. A chicken perches on a fence post, like it's rethinking its life choices. You grab the dull hatchet and start hacking ice from the well lid. It's a miserable task, but water doesn't collect itself. After several minutes, your fingers go from numb to stabbing pain to something worse. Nothing at all. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants experienced frostbite frequently or simply chalked it up as the usual. You, on the other hand, just want your fingers to feel feelings again. Eventually, the ice cracks. You pull up a bucket with a slosh that might as well be liquid gold. Your reward? Half the bucket spills when your brother bumps you on his way to the woodshed. Typical. Back in the hut, your mother's making a weak porridge with yesterday's barley scraps. It's got the consistency of despair. But you eat it anyway, grateful for the heat it brings to your belly. Once the snow piles up, most outdoor labor grinds to a halt, except for the essentials. The animals still need tending, the woodpile still needs restocking, and someone has to check the barn to make sure no wolves have decided to move in for the season. Guess who's volunteered? You grab the lantern, its weak flame flickering against the wind, and trudge through the thickening snow to the barn. The wind whips at your cheeks, drawing tears from your eyes, which promptly freeze into tiny daggers. You mutter curses under your breath. Nothing too spicy. Your mother's ear is better than any village gossip. The barn creaks like a ship lost at sea. Inside, the cows huff clouds into the air, eyes rolling at your late arrival. You pat there absently as you check the stalls. Nothing unusual. Until you notice tracks. Not yours. Not a cow. Something lighter, more clawed. You swallow. Probably just a fox, you whisper, because saying anything else out loud would be a betrayal of your nerves. Still, you tuck the lantern closer to your chest and whistle loudly, just in case anything is listening, needs a warning. You finish your rounds faster than usual and latch the door behind you with a satisfying clunk. Back through the snow you go, your footprints quickly swallowed by the falling flakes. At midday, the bell rings from the chapel. It's not Sunday. That's odd. You and a few others gather in the square, squinting through the snowfall. The priest stands on the steps, holding a scroll with a wax seal, a message from the Lord's manor. Everyone groans. Turns out the Baron's tax collector is coming early this year. He wants grain, dried meat, and fuel from each household. You're not even sure you'll have enough to last your own family through winter, but refusing is not an option. Last time someone resisted, he was volunteered for a month of road maintenance in January, with no shoes. So the village council convenes again. Emergency planning, rationing. A few people propose hiding part of the grain, but others shake their heads. Too risky. You can't eat what gets you arrested, says one old woman, and everyone nods. There's talk of cutting back on candles, skipping evening meals, and sharing cloaks for warmth. Someone jokes about merging families for body heat. You laugh, but also make a mental list of the warmest villagers. Later, as darkness begins to stretch across the snowy fields, you help your father portion out the grain sacks. Every scoop feels like you're handing away your survival, and still, it's not enough. You know what's coming, the pigs. You try not to look as your father selects the youngest. It's not even fat yet. Better now than never, he mutters. You hate the sound of that axe, hate it even more when you're the one sharpening it. As night falls, the family gathers close around the fire. The stew is thin but hot. Conversation flickers like the flames. Snippets of fear, bursts of laughter, long silences. You ask your sister to tell a story. She spins a tale about a girl who tricked the winter spirit by dressing as a crow. It's silly, but somehow comforting. You crawl into bed with layers upon layers of cloth, straw and wool. You curl into a tight ball, listening to the snow tap on the roof. For a moment you let yourself pretend it's peaceful, but in the stillness you hear something else, a howl or just the wind playing tricks again. You bury your head under the blanket. Either way, tomorrow's going to be colder. The next morning you wake up with a nose so cold it feels like it's been carved from stone. You grope around for the blanket that's slipped halfway to the floor. When you sit up, your breath fogs the air and your fingers ache as they fumble with the twine holding your tunic shut. Outside it's quiet again, too quiet. That's never good. You shuffle out the door and instantly regret it. Overnight, a new storm has added another thick layer to the already deep snow. But that's not the problem. The problem is the barn roof. It's collapsed. You sprint through the drifts, slipping twice, nearly losing a boot, and skid to a stop in front of the wreckage. It's not a total cave-in, thank the saints, but a huge chunk of thatch has come down under the weight. The cows are spooked but unharmed. The hay's wet now, though, and that's a bigger deal than you'd think. Moldy hay can make animals sick, and sick cows mean no milk, and no milk means, well, you're not going to think that far ahead before breakfast. You spend the next 2 hours patching the roof as best you can, relayering the thatch with whatever semi-dry reeds you can scrounge. It's miserable, precarious work, especially when your gloves are stiff with ice and your ladder is a stack of barrels that wobble every time you shift weight. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants understood engineering or just had a high tolerance for danger. You lean toward the latter. Back in the village, there's a different crisis. A family 3 doors down has lost a child overnight. Fever. It crept in after dusk, burned through her tiny body like a lightning strike, and vanished by dawn. No one says the word plague, but it dances behind every whisper. You see it in the way people now pass each other at a slightly wider distance, how hands hover just above shoulders instead of touching, how bread is placed on thresholds rather than handed over. Your mother tells you to keep quiet. People need stories, not panic, she says, as she wraps the dead child in linen. There will be no priest. He hasn't left the chapel since the snow began falling, says he's fasting for divine guidance. Convenient. You and the other boys are sent to dig a grave. The ground is frozen solid, of course, so every thrust of the spade is like picking a fight with stone. It takes hours. By the end, your hands are blistered, your face streaked with sweat and snot, and your knees barely hold your weight. Still, the grave is shallow. You feel shame rise in your throat, thick and bitter. That night, the family gathers in the square to light a candle. Just one. Everyone stands silent, heads bowed, the only sound being the crackle of frost underfoot and the distant howl of wind dragging itself across the hills. You watch your breath rise with the smoke and wonder if the child's soul is doing the same. The days after are colder, not just in temperature. People speak less. Laughter vanishes. Meals grow shorter, thinner. The tax collector has yet to arrive, but everyone is already paying, mostly in spirit. Even the chickens look depressed. And then another blow. The river is frozen over. You wouldn't think that's a problem, right? Less soggy ground, more snowball fights. But the river isn't just a background feature. It's the village's lifeline. No fish, no travel, no barter from the next hamlet over. Worse, ice means no milling. See, the village mill, your one saving grace when it comes to turning rough grain into edible food, is powered by a water wheel. No moving water, no turning wheel, no flour. So now, your family is forced to grind grain by hand using the old quern stones. You try to help, but it's like bench pressing a mountain. One turn feels like punishment for every sin you've ever committed, and a few you probably haven't yet. By the third day, your arms are jelly. You contemplate switching lives with the goat. It doesn't have to grind anything and has a warm little shed with a stolen sock hanging off one horn. There's one source of relief, the village elder, Agnes. She's 82, has more missing teeth than remaining ones, and owns what might be the warmest hearth in town. Every few evenings she hosts Story Hour. Not officially, of course. People just gather. She tells tales from when she was young, before the last great famine, before the Baron's father tightened the laws, before the wolves grew so bold. She has this way of making winter sound like a character, cruel but fair, like a god who only asks that you don't stop moving. One night, she tells a story about a knight who got lost in the snow, and wandered into the underworld, mistaking it for a castle cloaked in ice. He danced with ghosts, she whispers, and only knew they were dead because their feet left no prints in the frost. You look around at your neighbors, their faces glowing in the firelight, their breath rising in clouds. You wonder if you're leaving prints. At home, your mother has started sewing patches onto your cloak, with thread made from old hemp rope. It smells like mildew and sheep, but it holds. You ask if she ever regrets staying in the village. She laughs. Where would I go? The next village is just as cold, and I hear their pigs bite. You try to smile, but your lips are cracked and swollen from the wind. That night, you dream of warmth, not fire, not a blanket, something else. Sunlight. You're standing in a field of wheat. The sky is bright. Your clothes are light, and no one is coughing. You blink. It vanishes. You wake to another icy dawn. Your boots crunch over frost-laced dirt as you trudge to the animal shed. The sunrise doesn't glow so much as grimace through gray clouds. You barely notice. You're focused on the goat, which has decided today is the day to go full acrobat and perch atop the hay rack like a judgmental gargoyle. She bleats once, long and slow, as if to say, "We're all doomed, but I plan to do it with flair." You're honestly a bit jealous. Milk's down again. The cows are thin and nervous, and the chickens have stopped laying completely. It's not just your homestead. Everyone's animals are struggling. You overhear whispers of neighbors secretly feeding their pets before their children. You judge, but yesterday your mother split a boiled turnip 5 ways and called it feast night. Humor's the last ingredient in any winter meal. Still, life drags forward. You spend hours chopping wood and hours more scavenging branches from the forest edge. But there's danger there now. Not the ghost stories kind, though the woods do creak in unsettling ways, but wolves, real ones. They've come down from the hills, lean and braver than usual. One even stole a hen in broad daylight last week. The village puts up more torches at night, forms a rotating watch, and even strings noisy bits of metal from trees to spook predators. Whether it's working is debatable. One theory is the wolves are just mocking you from the shadows. Historians still argue whether wolves were genuinely emboldened during harsh winters or simply remembered where the easiest prey lived. Either way, you walk faster after sundown now, keeping one hand on the small knife you barely know how to use. Then comes the salt crisis. You'd think salt would be the one thing you wouldn't worry about. But with the river frozen and no trade carts arriving, your family's dwindling stash becomes precious. It's not just for taste. Salt preserves meat. Salt keeps you alive. Without it, the little you manage to trap or butcher spoils fast. Your father cuts the meat thinner and thinner, so thin it's translucent, and hangs it near the hearth in strips, hoping it'll dry before it rots. One day, you see him nibbling raw lard just to stave off hunger, and you have to look away. That night, while sitting on the hard-packed earth, that passes for a bed, you start to ask your sister a question, but stop. You're not sure why. She notices. "What?" she says. Her voice cracks a little. "Nothing, you lie." You were going to ask what she thinks spring will feel like, but somehow that feels cruel. Later, while trying to sleep, you press your ear to the wall and listen. Wind, boards creaking, then faintly sobbing. Not from your house, somewhere else, maybe across the lane, maybe from the thatched hut with the broken door and too many eyes inside. You pull the blanket tighter and try to breathe slowly, quietly. The next day brings good news and bad news. Good news, the clouds part, and for once you see the sun. It looks weird. You forget how yellow it's supposed to be. The snow gleams with a kind of light that almost hurts. You stand outside for 5 full minutes, eyes closed, pretending you're warm. Bad news. Someone's stolen the village's backup grain store. Just like that. Gone. It wasn't much. Only a few sacks hidden in the chapel basement. But it was emergency food. Someone, no one knows who, pried the door open, dragged the sacks out, and vanished into the woods. Some think it was a traveler. Others suspect someone local. You look at everyone a little differently now. The priest calls it divine punishment. The Lord tests the faithful in their hour of need, he says, which is easy to say when your walls are stone and your hearth never goes out. Villagers start locking doors, not a common practice before. Trust is fragile. You catch your father wedging a wooden bar through your door handle at night, muttering, "Just in case." He won't say what that means. There's one moment of laughter, though. A boy named Hummo slips on the ice while trying to carry a basket of eggs and manages to land perfectly in a snowbank. Basket, eggs, and all, without breaking a single one. The village children declare him chosen by the egg spirits. He declares himself Lord of the Yoke. It's silly and dumb and wonderful. You laugh until your stomach hurts, and then you cry a little without moving your face. In the middle of the week, a rumor starts. A traveler from the south brought word of an early thaw. People scoff. The south always melts first, but the idea sparks something. You start checking the icicles near your door, looking for drips. When one finally forms, your sister makes a big show of catching it in a bowl. You both watch it melt as if it were gold. Of course, that night brings another hard freeze. The melted patch turns into a treacherous slab. Your brother slips and lands on his elbow. It swells like a fat turnip. You wrap it in boiled wool, but there's nothing else to do. If it's broken, he'll just have to heal crooked. You remember a story Agnes told about a boy with a crooked arm who became a blacksmith because he swung his hammer at an angle no one else could. You repeat the tale to your brother. He doesn't smile, but he listens. That's enough. By now, every day feels the same. You wake, you work, you ache, you eat if you're lucky, you sleep. If you dream, you forget. But there's something oddly comforting in the repetition, like the beat of a drum, like your heart, still ticking, still here. That night your mother places a piece of dried apple in your bowl. Just one slice. You haven't tasted fruit since last autumn. It tastes like sunshine and lies. You chew slowly, trying to make the moment last. You go to bed that night wondering, if winter is a character in your story, what role do you play? Survivor, victim, villain, maybe just witness. The morning begins with silence so deep you think something must be wrong. No roosters, no creaking carts, not even the usual chorus of coughs and door slams. Just the low crackle of dying embers and the rustle of straw as you shift under the covers. Then your stomach growls, loudly. Okay, the world isn't broken, just cold and hungry. You shuffle outside and immediately regret it. The snow has developed a hard crust overnight. It crackles like burnt sugar underfoot, brittle and sharp. You slip twice just getting to the latrine, and on the second fall, you catch your hand on a buried twig. Blood beads in tiny red dots. You stare at them, surprised. You'd almost forgotten your body could still leak something warm. Back inside, breakfast is water, just warm water. Your father grins and calls it peasant tea, and you laugh a little, but it tastes like disappointment. You pretend it's soup. Your sister stirs it thoughtfully like she's about to discover a new spice. She murmurs, hints of dirt. Outside, villagers are congregating near the center again. Not a festival, not a funeral. This is something worse. A meeting. These are dangerous. Desperation lives in public decisions. You arrive just in time to hear the baker's wife shouting, "No more bartering. You hoard what you have, and you feed your own." Murmurs of agreement. Others protest. If we stop trading, the weak die first. "Then let them," someone mutters. You watch the old miller try to calm them, voice trembling. "We need each other. We always have." But no one's listening. Trust was a luxury, and winter took it. And then the unthinkable. Someone suggests moving the sick out of the village. Just for now, they claim. Just until the worst passes. They mean the coughing child in the weaver's hut, and the feverish old woman beside the smithy. You shiver, but not from cold. This isn't survival, it's surrender. Historians still argue whether small communities truly banished the ill or simply isolated them within households. But either way, fear spreads faster than plague. That afternoon, 2 families quietly shifted their sick relatives to an abandoned shack by the woods. No one stops them. You're told to stay inside after dark. Not safe anymore, your father says. He doesn't mean wolves, or maybe he does. But something's changed in his eyes, like he's afraid of neighbors now. Inside your home, the air is smoky and close. Everyone's skin smells of ash and sweat and old wool. There's no privacy. None. You sleep inches from your brother. You change clothes under a blanket, and the tension, the unspoken tightness builds. Until one night, it explodes. Your sister, usually the calmest, snaps at your mother over nothing. A misplaced comb, maybe. Maybe if we had mirrors, you'd see what you're turning into, she spits, and instantly regrets it. But the room erupts, yelling, accusations, tears, and then silence again, like winter itself just scolded you all. Later that night, your father mutters, "This season peels us like onions, layer by layer." You don't answer. You just pull your blanket over your head and pretend you're somewhere, anywhere else. Days pass, then weeks, or maybe just long shadows stitched together. Food grows stranger. You boil bark shavings, you toast acorns, you chew dried roots like leather. One neighbor claims moss tea helps with digestion. Another swears by roasted mice. You think it's a joke until he offers you one. You decline politely. He shrugs and eats it whole. One evening, a traveler arrives, an old man with a walking stick and a cart that's more wheel than wood. He brings stories, not supplies. Says spring has reached the southern coast. Birds are nesting, he whispers. Bees are buzzing, you'll see. He might be crazy, but you want to believe him. He sleeps one night in the church vestibule and is gone by dawn. That same day, a crow lands on your fence. Just one, fat, loud, cocky. You and your sister named him Sir Reginald. He caws exactly once, then flies off in the direction of the thaw. You laugh too hard, which quickly becomes a coughing fit. Worth it, you wheeze. Things start to shift. The icicles drip longer in the afternoon. The ground softens slightly. Someone finds a snowdrop, the flower, and places it in a bowl of water like it's sacred. Maybe it is. That night, the whole village gathers around to stare at it. No one speaks. No one dares. The children are the first to change. They start playing again, quietly at first, kicking balls of frozen mud, tracing shapes in thawed puddles, then louder. You watch them chase each other, boots clumping, laughter echoing. It feels off, like sound moving faster than memory, but joy returns in fragments. A loaf shared by surprise, a song hummed softly. Your mother is smoothing your hair while you sleep. These moments are brittle, like spun sugar, but they're real. One morning you wake before the others. Light floods through the window, real golden light. You step outside barefoot just to feel something, and there it is, the mud, squishy, cold, alive. Your feet sink slightly and you giggle, not because it's funny, but because it's true. The earth is soft again, and soft means hope. In the distance, the woods no longer look haunted. They look promising, like they might let you in again, maybe even give you something. You run back inside, heart thudding. Wake up, you whisper. Wake up. I think it's over. It's not over, not really, but it feels different. That morning, the sun doesn't just rise, it stretches. You watch the golden light seep into cracks between shutters, painting everything amber like butter melting on old wood. The smell in the air is new too, less like fire and more like wet leaves and thawed dung. Still not pleasant, but change rarely smells like roses. You and your sister race to the stream, the one that's been silent for months. It gurgles now, hesitant like a throat clearing before a speech. You kneel beside it, fingers in the current. It's painfully cold but moving, alive. That alone makes you laugh. The first chore of the new thaw is mud. Mud on shoes, mud on skirts, mud in the bed when someone forgets to wash. You quickly learn that nothing sticks like thaw mud. It's the color of regret and the texture of betrayal. You scrape it off the goat's hooves, and it clings to your sleeve like an emotionally needy acquaintance. By noon, your father has hauled out the plow blade. It's rusted and warped and probably cursed, but it's a symbol. Fields will open soon. Not yet. The frost still grips the earth like a miser clings to coins, but the grip loosens. The villagers gather again, this time with plans instead of panic. The baker volunteers to start grinding barley early. The smith agrees to sharpen every blade, even the petty lords, though he mutters about parasites with titles. You offer to help with weaving repairs. Everyone contributes, because spring isn't charity, it's a test. Food stores are down to dust. You've eaten through the good, the bad, and the questionably moving. One remaining root cellar holds only onions and regret. But the prospect of planting makes your stomach feel oddly full. Hope can do that. Still, your body's not convinced. You're tired in a way that sleep can't fix. Your hands tremble when they shouldn't. Your joints ache even when you sit still. And the cough in the village hasn't disappeared. It's quieter now, yes, but lingering, like smoke in old stone. You visit the sick shack. They're thinner, grayer. A few are missing. No one says where they've gone. You help spoon water into cracked lips, hold hands that barely twitch in yours. The weaver's boy recognizes you and grins. You've got dirt on your face, he rasps. You wipe it away, then realize he's right. You're covered in spring. Historians still debate whether peasant recoveries were more psychological than medical. How much of the getting better was just surviving long enough to call it that? But in moments like these, statistics feel irrelevant. This isn't survival. This is resurrection. You pass the chapel and hear music. Real, human, off-key music. A girl with a wooden flute and more optimism than talent is playing something vaguely cheerful. You sit beside her and hum along. It's terrible. It's perfect. That evening, your mother hangs wet clothes on a line again. First time in months. The wind catches them like sails. You imagine your tunic flying away to warmer lands. Maybe you should sew tiny maps into the seams. Inside, your brother and sister are arguing about chickens. Again. But it's the kind of bickering that makes the house feel whole. No one's shouting anymore. No one's hiding from grief. Your father trims his beard in a pot of cloudy water and declares, "Time to look civilized again." You all laugh. He still looks like a startled bear, but it's the thought that counts. And then there's the first green. You find it the next day, a single sprig near the compost pile, bright, defiant, rude in its audacity. You don't even know what it is. Could be weed, could be a miracle. You kneel, cupping it like a treasure, whispering, "Welcome back." Other shoots follow. You start mapping them like stars. One near the stable, two by the well, a shy cluster under the ladder. Your sister begins talking to them, naming them. "This one's Mildred," she says. "She looks judgmental." You don't question it. By midweek, people are smiling again. Not all the time, not without reason, but real smiles. The blacksmith makes a crude joke about goats. The priest chuckles. The priest. That's how you know the thaw has settled. Your mother stitches new patches into worn clothes. You see her pause, then quietly add a little embroidery. Nothing extravagant, just a flower here, a sunburst there. Beauty feels daring now, almost scandalous. You don't stop her. The air changes at night. No longer bitter, just brisk. You sleep a little deeper, dream of soft moss and warm bread. Your feet stop aching when you wake up. And then one afternoon, a group of boys ran through the village yelling, "Frogs! Frogs in the ditch!" It becomes an event. Everyone rushes to see them, clustered like emeralds in puddles. You crouch low and watch one blink. It croaks at you with the kind of authority only an amphibian can muster. Nature's back, your father says, standing behind you, about time. That night you eat the last withered apple from the storehouse. It's mealy and tastes faintly of dust, but you chew slowly. There's no rush now. The trees will blossom again, bees will buzz, the orchard will hum, and so will you. And just like that, it's planting season. You wake up to the grunt of oxen and the clank of chains. Outside, your father is already in the field, guiding the plow like a man chasing time. The soil opens beneath the blade, dark, rich, steaming faintly as it exhales the memory of snow. You slip into your boots, grab a sack of seeds, and join the line of shadows moving steadily across furrowed earth. Your hands work on instinct now, scooping and dropping, covering and stepping. There's a rhythm to it, like a heartbeat, or maybe a prayer. Every family in the village is out here, heads bowed not in reverence, but in effort. The land demands everything, again. You feed it with sweat and hope and a little curse under your breath every time a clump of soil hits your shin. By midday, your back feels like someone stuffed hot rocks beneath your shoulder blades. Your fingers are blistered. You pause to stretch, then look around. The fields are patchwork, half turned, half waiting, but they're alive, and for the first time in months, so are you. The sun is warmer now, not mocking, not dangerous. It kisses your skin like it missed you. The air smells of grass, wet bark, and distant manure, less offensive than it sounds. Children run between rows, laughing and tossing pebbles. Your sister tries to teach one of the younger boys how to plant in straight lines. He plants a smiley face pattern instead. No one corrects him. You spot the baker's wife sitting under a tree, her belly round with new life. She waves. You wave back. Historians often debate whether medieval village life allowed for moments of peace amid hardship. But here's one, plain as day. A woman resting under a budding tree, waiting for both a baby and a harvest. What could be more hopeful than that? In the evening, you wash your feet in the stream again. It's faster now, carrying petals from somewhere uphill. The water sings, you hum along. Inside your house, the hearth crackles, not out of necessity, but habit. The warmth is gentle. The bread is rough and chewy, but not burnt. Your brother makes a dumb joke about a cow marrying a goat. Everyone groans. Your mother smiles. You lie on the straw mattress, every limb heavy and sore, but it's the good kind of tired, earned, deserved. You stare at the wooden beams above, tracing the grooves with your eyes. They're older than you, maybe older than your parents. They've seen it all, storm and silence, joy and rot, and still they hold the roof steady. That night, the village holds a bonfire. Not for a feast, one has that kind of surplus yet, but for a story. Old Maud tells it. Her voice cracks and wobbles but never stops. She speaks of a time when the river turned to glass, and the sky never changed color, and people disappeared in the fog only to return weeks later with eyes like coins. You all know it's nonsense. Or maybe you don't. Who are you to argue with a woman who's buried 3 husbands and still walks without a cane? The fire glows on faces you haven't seen in weeks. You notice new lines, new bruises, new smiles. The priest plays a lute badly. Someone sings off key. Your sister dances like no one's watching, which is bold since everyone is. Eventually, people drift away, one by one, until only embers remain. You sit beside them, watching them glow and fade. Your father joins you. "We made it," he says. You nod, but the look in his eyes says something more complicated. Because winter doesn't vanish, it burrows, it leaves traces. In the bones, in the cupboards, in the way your mother flinches when she hears coughing, but still, you made it. And now, the wind down, the village settles into its gentle night rhythm. Oxen sigh in the stables, firelight flickers behind shuttered windows. A dog barks once, then curls into silence. Your bed is still hard, still smells faintly of straw mold, but tonight it cradles you. The chill that once cut to the bone is now just a whisper, and your blanket, threadbare as it is, feels like a shield. You close your eyes. Think of the stream flowing stronger every day. Think of the seed you dropped just before sunset, pressed gently into earth that's ready to forgive. Think of the frogs, the songs, the smiles, and know this, even in the harshest times, even when your ribs show and your spirit thins, the thaw always comes. Maybe not soon, maybe not clean, but always, and now you rest. Let the earth spin without you for a while. Let your breath slow. You're warm, you're safe, you're home.